Thank you to everyone who is joining us in the webinar and live on YouTube and Facebook. We will be getting started in about 30 seconds. And thank you again to everyone who is joining us for tonight's Social Justice in Chicago, the push for better living conditions. I'm now going to turn it over to Elvia Malagón.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Social Justice in Chicago, the push for better living conditions. Before we get started, we want to take a moment to thank the Chicago Community Trust. Thanks to their support, all of the stories I write are not behind a paywall, but we do encourage you to consider supporting local journalism by getting a Chicago Sun-Times subscription, which is only $2.49 a month, and that includes the digital replica of the print edition, along with access to all of the content on our website. We are joined tonight by Chicago residents who have been at the forefront of demanding better living conditions in Chicago. Our guests include Brenda Duncan, who's a resident and member of the North Point Tenant Association on the city's far north side. Earlier this year, she and other North Point residents went public and detailed that they had been living with faulty stoves and bug infestations after the property underwent renovations. Another guest is London Jamerson, who is a Chatham community activist and resident. She is part of a group of residents who have been speaking publicly about the conditions in their buildings as they have changed ownership and management multiple times during the coronavirus pandemic. Eric Sirota is the Director of Housing Justice at the Schreiber Center for Poverty Law. He has fought for the rights of homeowners and tenants in a wide variety of contexts, including legal aid, the Illinois Office of the Attorney General, and as a law school clinic instructor at the University of Michigan and University of Illinois. The Schreiber Center's housing work focuses on supporting tenant associations, affordable housing preservation, and housing access for those with justice involvement. Working behind the scenes is Gabriela Rivero Allen, who is providing our viewers with Spanish translation on Zoom. And I'm your host, Elvia Malagón, a reporter at the Chicago Sun-Times. I'm focused on issues such as social justice and income inequality issues. And for those that are watching us through Zoom tonight, you could use the chat box to ask questions, and we'll also have a dedicated time at the end for questions and answers. We're here tonight because throughout the coronavirus pandemic, we've seen tenants in Chicago organizing themselves, in particular, as many feared there would be a wave of evictions. But they've also come together to improve their living conditions amid the worldwide health pandemic. Residents like Brenda and Joe London are among those who have gone public to show how they've been living with mold and pests as they've tried various methods of seeking repairs. So let's dive right into the conversation. And to start off, I wanted to start off with you, Ms. Duncan. And can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been living there at North Point, which is located in the Rogers Park neighborhood?
Yes, I've been here 35 years. I actually came in 1983 and left and came back, but 35 years exactly I've been here.
Yeah, and I met you a couple months ago, and at that point, the issue had gotten so dire that you and your neighbors kind of banded together and decided to go public and do a press conference about some of the issues. But I wondered if you could kind of walk us through, because the issues had started before that, if you could kind of walk us through when the issue started. And it seems like a lot of these issues started to happen when there were renovations done on the property.
Yes, the renovation brought on a lot of the issues and problems that we never knew that really existed in apartments, which was 2021. 2019 is when they told us that there were going to be renovations. They told us everything was going to look beautiful, this, that, the other. I mean, just showed us pictures that everybody just couldn't wait. It was like a dream. And trust me, it wasn't. It was a nightmare when we came back. They renovated most of the apartments within 5 days. It took them a year to do all of the apartments because everybody didn't go out at the same time. But 5 days were the all you needed to be out of the apartment and back in after the renovation was completed, which was not true. It was not completed, but the renovation was over with.
Yeah, and can you tell me a little bit? I know when we last spoke, you mentioned there were issues with like stoves. Some people all of a sudden started to see bugs coming, like bug infestations. What were you and your neighbors experiencing at that point?
At that point, we had stoves that were installed, electric stoves. Most of the stoves didn't work. The top of the stove, it'll cook for maybe 10 minutes and it shuts off and then it comes back on. The same with the oven. So they weren't really good working stoves. So we've been out of a stove for a whole year. And right now to this day, we're still out. Some of us are. And a lot of people came back to, I mean, infestation is, when I say infestation, I mean just that. Mice. Some people were infested with roaches, bed bugs. It was just horrible. It's horrible. And I mean, we didn't have many, I mean, several renovations and never this. But this was something that nobody really dreamed of. It's like I said, it was a nightmare for most of us.
And at what point did you and your neighbors, decide to organize yourselves? And can you talk a little bit about what actions you all started to take once you all started to kind of realize like that these were problems, that it wasn't just one person, it was multiple units that were having these issues?
Well, what we did, it was, how many? At the time, it was like 66 people all at once. And we were always North Point tenant. It just fell off, during the pandemic, and we weren't meeting as often as we used to. But I'm with Northside Action for Justice, which they call N4J, with Mark Kaplan. And we do a lot of this here all over the city of Chicago. But once we all got together, we heard everybody's story. Some of them are the same as others, and some are, a little different than what we expected. But we started that. We brought in the state officials, which is our alder lady, our state rep, Kelly Cassidy. She came in. And we also been dealing with Hood and Ida, who's also working with us now because of the, the reports, the issues, the TV cast coming out. So now people are coming out, even though we had reported this to them prior. But now, since it's been news, people are trying to work with a lot of the residents, get a lot of the issues resolved.
And how did you guys, well, two questions. Why did you guys decide to involve, elected officials like Maria Haddon and Kelly Cassidy? And also, how did you guys, how were you all able to do that?
Well, I mean, I've been working around with Kelly because I used to work with Joe Moore a lot, and I've been knowing Kelly for a while. And she's been helping us ever since, in North Point for a great while. And we had to have somebody who had pull, because this was getting too out of hand. People are living in just nothing. I mean, it's nothing that you choose to. You see people in tents, why they have to live like that. But we're living just like them, except we have a roof over our head. It's just everything else was open. It was open enough for mice to come in. They left walls open. They left baseboards uncovered. They left everything, hazardous, everything. But we had to get the state officials in to talk with the state and federal government, which I was asking, why do they still get money for something that they're not doing? So we had to bring the state in, and the state brought HUD and IDA in, and they've been working with us since. I can't say everything has been completed because it has not. Right to this day, they're going to be moving my daughter out for the second time for a complete renovation because they didn't renovate her place right. June 6th. They're going to close up the gaps, the walls, baseboards, just everything all over again. So, and this what brought her to have a renovation is because of the reports and bringing in the state officials and IDA and HUD, because they came out to see how we were living. And this is our results that we're getting now. We all haven't got them all, but because of IDA and state officials, now they want to work with us as far as getting these issues taken care of.
And I want to go to Miss Jamerson, who lives sort of on a different part of the city. She lives on the south side in Chatham. Miss Jamerson, can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been in living there for, and when the problem started for you all? I think you might still be on mute, Miss Jamerson.
Yes, I was. Okay. Hello, everyone. I've been living in Chatham all of my life, but I've been living there for 17 years. We have changed hands several times, but unfortunately, we dealt with a different situation that was going on. We dealt with people that came and bullied tenants there. They kicked in doors and they pulled guns on women, and they put them out without due process of the law. We had tenants that were at work and they kicked in their door and they sat and took their things out of their homes. Then we changed hands again, and then the worst issue started. We had lead and chip paint that they claimed that they were going to clean up and they were not going to do. But we had mold, we had black, thick mold through the walls, and people were getting sick and passing away, and they were ill. My seniors in my buildings became ill. They were leaving, and they were putting new tenants inside of these apartments without properly cleaning them and doing the necessary repairs that needed to be done. That's why I got on board, and I've been fighting for the justice, not just for myself, but for all the tenants and the elder ones that have moved on or have been placed in other apartments for temporary living. But this is why Chicago Healthy Home Ordinance needs to be passed to so we wouldn't have to deal with this situation anymore. Why should we constantly pay rent and people have eviction and there's no justice for the people that own the buildings? Where is the bill that needs to be passed for them to get together and say, this can no longer go on? We got to get inspections. We got to get rental registry done right, because people are still paying to live like slums. They have came in our buildings, they have fixed things, but to me, this is what I call it, and this is what I will continue to say. They're putting Band-Aids on cancer. Until you get the cancer out of the buildings, then you cannot keep on putting Band-Aids on something that's really, really, truly broken. And mold, it makes our children slow, they're irritable, they're tired. Our senior citizens have lung and respiratory issues and problems. So many other things that I could name, but I don't want to take up too much time. But these are issues that we need to address, and this is why I talked to my alderman, and I've talked to other aldermen about getting this Chicago Home Ordinance bill passed here in Chicago, but not just Chicago, wherever else is happening at. But right now, I only can speak for my side of the town and the people that we're dealing with, and then when we got together, we found out it wasn't one building, it wasn't two buildings, it wasn't 15 buildings, it was over 26 buildings that the same people owned and were being slum landlords to these people. To ceilings were caving in, walls and floors were buckling. How much longer do we have to deal with this situation here in Illinois? And this has just not started. This has been going on for many, many years. And we're asking for change. I agree with the lady that spoke before me. The only difference is I'm not sleeping outside, but I am sleeping with a roof over my head. But it's not a healthy condition roof over my head. I'm living day to day with lung issues and problems and issues that don't make me and the tenants live in a healthy environment. So where's the justice? Where's the justice, not just for myself, but for all 26 of these buildings that we're talking about?
Thank you, Ms. Jamerson. And I wanted to bring in Eric into the conversation. We've heard from Ms. Duncan and Ms. Jamerson. Both of them live, I should say for viewers out there, different owners, different parts of the city, but facing somewhat similar situations. So what remedies or avenues are there to try to get changes in your building? And also, some of these buildings are privately owned buildings, market rate rent that they're paying. Others are subsidized by federal or government agencies like HUD or CHA here in Chicago. So can you kind of walk us through what are some options for renters?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think the first thing which both Ms. Jamerson and Ms. Duncan said, and which is something I'd really encourage residents to do at buildings, regardless of whether they're subsidized or not, is organize, get together with other tenants, form tenant organizations. They don't necessarily need to be very formal. They don't need to have a lot of processes, but tenants coming together to assert their rights, obviously it is much easier said than done, and is, as the two folks before me said, an arduous process. But I think organizing itself is a really important step. I also think that there are, and I think also, to be honest, in some ways, I don't have that much to add to what Ms. Duncan and Ms. Jamerson said. I think that when once organized or once tenants are working together, then it can help to exert pressure on authorities or other entities. So, for example, bringing in HUD or a housing authority for subsidized housing, or bringing in the Department of Buildings or a municipal oversight for private, for public or private, for any properties. I also think there are legal services available, especially for individual residents that are facing eviction or facing unlivable conditions. There are legal services available, and I do think that, again, I think the overall change is going to come from tenants organizing, but I do think that having attorneys involved, having as I said, having politicians involved can also be a source of leverage, appealing to oversight agencies, HUD, for example, the City Department of Buildings, to enforce tenant rights.
I also wanted to ask you, Eric, because I know you've been working with tenants at one property, the Ellis Lakeview Apartments, which is on the south side, and again, owned by a different person, but also facing very, very similar things. And in that case, the city did file code violations, and it is currently like in the Cook County Circuit Court. So I wondered if you could talk about, if a property gets to that point where the city does file code violations, and it is taken to court, where do tenants come into that? What kind of rights do they have to get involved in that process, and how can they use their voice to influence what happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. So tenants actually have a legal right, and it's something generally courts have to grant them it's called intervening in these buildings cases. So if the city brings a case, like you referenced, against an owner of a building, people who live, the law says within 1,200 feet, but that includes people who live in the building, basically have a right to come to court and say that they also want to be a party to the litigation. So tenants have a right to have their voice heard in those kinds of cases. And I think it's really important because these cases can result in courts ordering building owners to make changes, but they could also theoretically result in a court ordering a building to be vacated. So it's really, really important that tenants, to the extent possible, can become part of those solutions and also offer their experiences. I mean, the city has inspectors that will inspect the building every few weeks or months, but obviously that can't capture what's going on at the building day to day for the building's residents. So the residents of the building are the most robust source of information for the court.
Yeah, and we actually had a story about that property and that case recently, like this week in the Chicago Sun-Times. And the story said that, the judge was considering possibly taking the step of putting a receiver that would take control over that property. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that means and how often that happens.
I think Ms. Jamerson might have had something to say in response to what I just.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Actually, she hit dead on the head of what I wanted to say, because I wanted to know how many times can a building change hands before somebody steps in and do something about it, because my building has changed hands several times. So I'm asking where, and she hit it dead on the head. So I'm waiting to hear the answer. That's all.
No, I mean, that's a great point. And I do think transitions, I do think often make things at their worst, or go from sort of bad to worse in some ways, because a new management company comes on and doesn't know the state of things. So the court is considering, so the city has asked the court to appoint a receiver, which is basically an entity appointed by the court that takes over management of the building. So they manage the day-to-day maintenance issues, rent gets paid to the receiver, sort of all the things you would think of. The HUD subsidy will be paid to the receiver. The things that you think of sort of a manager or owner doing. And I do think, like Ms. Jamerson just said, I think it can be a really important solution because it keeps tenants in the building. It doesn't displace people, but it also takes important steps to ensure that the building isn't being neglected, which is, kind of an obvious priority.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to ask here, because a lot of tenants didn't know this, you might call 311 and says, look, I want to report that there's no heat in my building, there's no lights in my building, my landlord hasn't, there's no water running. And then if they don't get a RV number from 311, that call just goes void. It's just a call. And the problem was, I didn't find this out until 2020, but I had been calling years before that. But my owner was still allowed to sell the building with the issues that were still at hand. Then the next owner was allowed to sell the building again with the same issues at hand. So now we're dealing with a problem and a situation that has been there for 15 years, but they are still allowing them to move into a property that's not fit for outside shelter, like a homeless person. It's not safe. And my problem is, it's not with the city, it's with the city, the state, and the federal government. Come on, let's stop doing this. Let's stop doing this in my neighborhoods and other people's neighborhoods. Please, where? Who do we contact? Who do I write? I'm just trying to follow. What's my next protocol? What's my next step to resolve the issues for my people and my community? And I need an answer. Thank you so much.
I think what you're saying is right. I don't know if I think again that there are, like you're saying, tenants can organize in buildings, but I don't know if there is a single quick answer to be given. And I don't think you're looking for one. I just think the unfortunate reality is that I don't know. I think that again, utilizing, kind of leveraging others with power, politicians, alder people, the city, HUD. I think these things push things in the right direction, but as you're saying, it's such a systemic problem that it is hard to sort of point to a single actor that can remedy it.
I am 55 years old. Do you know, here in the state of Illinois, a great leader spoke about the exact same situations of unfair housing conditions and problems here in the state of Illinois. And for us to be dealing with a situation that was spoke about in 1967, that's still being a big issue here in the state of Illinois 55 years later, is an injustice to fair housing, proper living, education, jobs, because they all fall in the same thing. If you're not housed correctly, you can't do your job correctly. You're not living healthy. Your children are not living healthy. The education that they're getting is unhealthy because they're tired. They're not healthy. So when will the justice of the unfair housing situation in here in the state of Illinois? I'm just wondering. It's 55 years later, and here I am speaking on behalf of an issue that was on hand before I was born. But I'm willing to speak up for the injustice that's occurring here in the state of Illinois. I'm tired, but I'm not too tired to stand up and make a difference. And I'm going to keep on fighting until I'm heard.
And that kind of leads me to what I wanted to ask you all. I mean, as you guys have kind of been sort of like in the trenches, trying to get improvements, trying to improve this. And based on the various experiences, I mean, especially for Ms. Jamerson and Ms. Duncan, who sometimes this has taken months, even like a year or more, to kind of bring attention and have someone sort of pay attention to what's going on. What kind of things do you think, maybe like the city or even HUD, CHA, those kind of sort of like government agencies, what do you think would improve sort of the process of being able to flag something that's going on and that's wrong and a possible health hazard?
I could say things shouldn't take reporters for people to pay attention to what's really going on in your apartment. I mean, there's a lot of things that's happening here that should not be happening, even as far as recertification. There's people filling out their recertifications, bringing in documents, but then asked to repeat those documents and repeat those documents. And then they're telling them, well, we don't have them. We don't know what happened. That is not acceptable, as well as living conditions is not acceptable. When do we get heard? Not just from HUD. I mean, this is money just being passed out here to all these owners, and we have to catch hell, and they're getting rich. They're not sleeping uncomfortable with infestations. They're not sleeping uncomfortable with unworking stoves or no heat. They get paid. I mean, they're paying a lot of these corporations, people, big top dollars. And nobody comes out to investigate to see, where the money is actually being applied to. We're living in nightmares. We didn't ask for this here. It's not like a choice. We're actually forced to live in low-income housing, because if we didn't have to live here, we wouldn't be here. But nobody really cares. It's just a job, and it's whatever. It's always been whatever. I grew up in the projects all my life. I'm from the projects to where I am today. My mom is still there. I'm just saying, who cares? Nobody cares. State officials, everybody know what's really going on, but what's happening? Nothing. I still don't see anything great getting ready to happen. The only reason why these people want to come and put band-aids or sticker on everything is because they're being public. They're being viewed. They're being, looked at. But soon as they put that band-aid on, we're going right back to the same routine. They're not going to fix what needs to be fixed. Nobody's actually really going to care. This has been going on forever.
But you mentioned that you thought maybe through the recertification process through HUD, that could be an avenue of possibly kind of flagging issues that are going on.
We have addressed that. They're asking people to sign even rental assistance forms to catch them on back rent. Back rent, people don't even know why they have back rent. I mean, for 2 years, this woman just screamed out yesterday. She hasn't had a lease in 2 years. But you ask her to fill out a rental assistance form because she owed thousands of dollars, and still nothing's happening. That needs to be investigated. A lot of this stuff is just not real. It's not real at all, and something has to be done with that. And I don't care who job it is, but I blame the state and the federal, because if you're not looking into all of this here, where the money is actually going, shame on you. If you're giving it, nowhere it's going, because it's definitely not going to the residents. They done filled the form out and they still owe. So no, it's the whole picture. It's just a fraud. Everything in here is a con. They don't really care. As long as they get their money or whatever, nobody really cares about us, because majority of us is Black and Hispanic. They don't care. They're going to put a Band-Aid on it for a month or so and back to square one again. That's how it is. And everybody knows.
Well, Ms. Duncan, I'll agree with you very much so. I do. I really, really do. Because that's another issue I wanted to address and bring up. There has been somewhere like $27 million put towards rental assistance. And the landlord gets the money and then he sells the property to somebody else. And those people are left hanging with a eviction notice because the money is not going to the proper people, or they're filling their pockets and then they're going home to someplace else. And then the building is sold. I applied for rentals assistance through the city and through the state, and I haven't heard anything, but the money is gone. Don't know where the heck it went. But the problem is, I'm not going to just speak to the news media anymore. If I got to march to the Capitol, I'm going all the way till I'm heard. If I got to walk to DC, I'm going to walk to the White House. Something needs to be done about this unfair housing. And guess what? Today is the day that we make a stand and march until we get something done, because I'm tired and I'm fed up of the unequal rights and justice here in the state of Illinois. And it has not just started. It's been going on for 57 years. So 57 years, if y'all haven't done nothing now, you got to do something this time, because my word will be heard. And I'm coming stronger than y'all think I'm coming. I'm not just one, I'm many. I'm many, because I'm not going to let this stop until I get it heard. If I got to go to Operation Push, if I got to go to NAJ, if I got to go to HUD, everybody will hear what's going on in the state of Illinois. It's about time. If Martin Luther King couldn't do it, I'm going to finish his dream and I'm going to make something happen. I guarantee I'm going to make something happen.
I'm walking with you.
I want you, before you leave here, please get my number and everything, because I would love to meet you, because we're going to march together. We're going to make a stand. We're going to make something happen, because this is not enough. We've been to the press. We've been to the news. We're here together. Let's stand together and let's make a difference, because something's got to change.
It do. It really do. And it's time out. I'm 68. I knew what it was when I was in Cabrini. Marion Stamps, she worked hard for us until she passed away. Now we got all her. Yeah, I mean, she worked really hard with us. So they promised us to come back once they tried to renovate or whatever they did. But that was all fibs. The same here.
That was lies.
Nobody actually cares. Everybody know exactly what's going on. All the high state officials, everybody know how we're living. But the only time they're gonna come out is when they are exposed to, because their names are mentioned. These are federal and government housing, and this is who they are.
Ms. Duncan, I think your mic went muted for a second. We might have missed the last part you were saying.
March to Springfield.
What happened?
Yeah, we missed the last part that you were saying, just because your mic was muted for a second.
What was it I said? You didn't hear anything? I mean, what part did you? I told her I was going to march with her for sure. I will be marching, of course. I don't care. We can walk it, we can bus it, train it, whatever, yourself a flying. But hey, I'm with her. I'm with her. I'm tired.
Eric, do you want to add anything as far as, what you think could be improved in sort of making this process of getting improvements better?
Free rent. They stopped paying their rent.
I'm sorry. Did you address that to me?
Oh, I was asking Eric, but.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead. I was listening to a landlord talk about that a lot of tenants, they were only giving them enough money to fix what needed to be fixed. But this is not the issue here that's at hand. These are people coming from New York and California, buying up property after the pandemics and passing it to the next hand and to the next hand. And it wasn't brought to our attention until we brought it to their attention, and then they resold the building again. So that's what we're trying to stop here, the injustice. Okay, Eric, I'm sorry.
Would you mind repeating the question?
I was asking what, as someone who has kind of like worked in this field, what do you think are some ways that either like the city, HUD, or any other agencies can streamline their process or improve their process to make sure that, residents like Ms. Duncan, Ms. Jamerson aren't having to kind of like, try to raise the flag for months, years, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there really needs to be much more of a zero tolerance policy from HUD and the city, that these oversight and enforcement agencies shouldn't be waiting for a tragedy to happen and shouldn't be waiting for things to spiral entirely out of control. I think when they see that the writing is on the wall and that there's an obvious neglect of property by an owner, there needs to be a really strong intervention. I think there can be a lot of hesitation to sort of engage in really bold enforcement action, and I think that it's really incredibly necessary. I mean, I think the rental market can be, as far as owners are concerned, it can be too much the Wild West and is not being reined in like it needs to be. I think things that really aid in that are making sure oversight agencies are well funded, so they're not always triaging cases, and also that the mission is a mission to advocate for tenants, and that's the goal, and that's what the people who work there took the job so they could do.
I wanted to ask you also really quick about Ms. Jamerson had mentioned calling 311. How effective is that?
I don't know if I feel, overall, I don't know. I don't know like the likelihood of a single 311 call changing things. I will say that I know some housing organizers will kind of organize tenants to call 311 sort of, or tenants will organize themselves to call 311 sort of en masse. And I think that does send more of I think that can send more of a signal and get more of the attention from the city. The other thing I wanted to say, and I should have said this before, and again, this kind of, some of this stuff gets kind of like, it's just kind of like gets buried in legal process, I think. But if there is a process where if tenants are writing to the city telling them there's a problem with a building and the city doesn't act after a certain period of time, the tenants can kind of assume the role of the city and act themselves to enforce the building code.
And how would they go about doing that? Because I'm actually, I'm not super familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can sort of lay out the exact steps and deadlines sort of right here and now, but it's a section of, it's called the Unsafe Property Act, and it dictates sort of that there's a process for putting the city on notice or that there's a problem, and then I believe it's after 90 days if the city doesn't act, tenants can kind of take it upon themselves to act. And also tenants also, as I think tenants are doing, is this isn't necessarily 311, but the building code can also, if you're if you're in, again, I know it's much easier said than done to get an attorney and things like that. But I do think that the building code can give it some small amount of leverage, because it's illegal, even if it doesn't have to only be enforced by the city. It can be enforced by private tenants too, although again, I know that's much easier said than done from people who have a million things going on in their lives.
And Ms. Jamerson, I saw you had a little paper you had written out, so I wanted to make sure you had a chance. I think your audio is still on mute.
Okay. What about talking with your alderman and getting this bill passed, the Chicago Healthy Homes Ordinance for proactive inspection and rental registry? If we get that bill passed at City Hall, we can make a difference right there, because this will make them accountable for. This will make them accountable for the buildings. And we need to try to get this bill passed. And our first step is making it known to the people to ask their aldermen to step up on the behalf of this bill. And we get this bill passed, and we can take it to the next step and make them accountable for it.
And that's the ordinance that would require or do more proactive inspections rather than waiting for code violations or things like that, right?
Yes, yes.
I know we're already almost at 7 o'clock, so I do want to make sure if anyone in the chat has any questions. I know there was someone in there that was asking about the role of, your alderman or your alderwoman in this. And I know some of you all have mentioned that you guys have spoken to your alder person. How effective has that been, and what have they been able to do?
Well, my alderman has came out several times. So far, I believe that he's on board, and I can say that his vote will be a yes. So I only can speak for mine. I can't speak for everybody else, but I hope that they get on board, because this is very important here in the state of Illinois. This is very important here in Chicago.
Ms. Duncan, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, yes, my alderman, which is Alderman Marie Hatton, yes, she's on board with us. And that is a great thing. She's working with Ida and HUD right now as far as getting a lot of these things, addressed. And right now, we're just at a waiting game to see what's going to happen next. But the biggest issue is really right now, the rental assistance forms, as far as that's going, because everybody is 66 people that's filled the forms out, but don't know where the money went and still owe. The other issue is the disrespect of the staff, the way they talk to the residents. And this bring out nothing but anger with everybody. They bring in people, I won't say they're professional, they're professional people of argumental, but they're not professional speaking people where you can sit down and feel comfortable. These people, I don't know where they get them from. It's always harsh. Everything they talk about, they just talk to you so badly. And we're already feeling bad, but then you got staff members that you didn't hire and you're paying money to even talk worse to us, and everybody's not getting ready to take all of that. It's bad. The staff is really bad. The rental assistance thing is really bad. There are 66 people are facing evictions because they want them to pay some back money, but the forms were already approved and don't nobody know where the money is. So our state officials are working with that. I don't know how close they are. We haven't had any contact, but I'm telling you, this is something that needs to really be looked in. Somebody higher has to look into this. You're giving out the money and you don't know how it's spent. Shame on you. So I don't know what else to say.
Someone had also asked about the owners, and I know from talking to residents in the past, That could be a confusing process because sometimes people, it's not Elvia Malagon owns this building. Sometimes it's an LLC or, things like that. So are there, from anyone in the panel, any kind of strategies for finding out, who even really owns your building? And especially for Ms. Jamerson, who mentioned she was able to kind of organize with people who lived in different buildings, but we're all kind of connected together.
The Cook County law, you can get the building looked up and by the address and the telephone number. So you just really gotta kind of do the footwork sometimes on your own. I mean, you got other tenants that's willing to work with you, but you can definitely look up and find out who owns the building. Even though it might say that person and it might be a LLC, then you can try, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think some businesses will also, they'll own different buildings under different corporate names. So I think sometimes it can also be about finding who are the individuals that are the registered agent with these corporations, for example, and kind of trying to trace the different businesses that person is involved with, because I think a lot of the slumlords will have different LLCs for each building or each city, or to obfuscate their role.
Yeah. I usually look up.
They pass the buck. They pass the buck. It might be 10 of them that owns the property, and then when they get caught with all of the violations and codes, then they'll switch it over to the next buddy that's in that 10, and then they'll keep on going until something's got to be done, because right now that's what they're doing. They're passing the buck from this person to this person to this person, and so on. So we just gotta try to, I'm not putting my foot, how can I say it? I'm not trying to put my foot down their throat, but I'm definitely going to try to connect my foot to whatever I need to do to keep on going. I guess that's kind of the best way to say it without being a little disrespectful. But I'm going to keep on going so we figure something out.
And we're approaching 7 o'clock, so I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I just wanted to check to see, make sure there's no last questions, and any last thoughts from everyone on the panel.
I would like to give Ms. Duncan my phone number.
I would like to have.
I'll definitely connect you guys afterwards.
Okay.
But any
Okay.
last things you want to say or think people should know?
I just feel like everybody needs to get a tenant organization together, because it's very much needed. Because when you go in big groups, sometimes you're heard. But when you're doing things on your own, there's nobody going to look into that situation. I mean, they still don't look into it the way that they should. But we all need to have some type of organizing with other tenants, with tenants itself. Because people just don't have a knowledge of how to go about this, that. They get tired of hearing people say, well, we're going to get it done, and it's never done. Or we'll fix this here, or we'll get to it. It's always an excuse. But when we come into big packs like this here and we call the media attention and newscasts, that's the only time we're going to get a result. We might get some hot water because they've been, exposed. So it's just we need a organization. Stick together. We all are in the same boat. Nobody is below, above, or whatever. We're all in the same boat. It's a forced situation, and that's what we, and we're just stuck with it. But I don't know what else to say, but I'm really happy to be on here today, and I thank you all just for listening. And I hope it really goes somewhere. Just thank you so much.
Ms. Jamerson or Eric, anything you guys wanna add?
It's been a pleasure and talking with you guys to put everything on the table to try to make a difference here in Chicago. And even though we're from different areas, we all came together for a common cause. And that speaks well within my heart. And I just want to thank everybody that reached out. And I hope that this is not the last time that I hear or see from you guys, but I'm hoping that we can move forward to make a difference. And just one last thing, I ain't done yet, nowhere close. I'm just beginning.
I think Ms. Jamerson and Ms. Duncan really said it all. It shouldn't be the idea that everyone should have adequate, stable, affordable housing just should not be a point of controversy. And the fact that it is just really steeped, I think, in a lot of racist and classist thinking, and is just really troubling. But I think, I mean, the work Ms. Duncan and Ms. Jamerson are doing is unbelievable and incredibly difficult. And I just appreciate their insights a lot.
I want to thank you guys for joining us for this. Ms. Jamerson, I think you got a couple people ready to march with you. So we'll definitely be looking forward to that. We want to thank the Chicago Sun-Times and again, the Chicago Community Trust for their generosity. We do want to just reiterate, if you would like to support local journalism, the best way to do so is by subscribing to the Chicago Sun-Times, and you can find more information about that at suntimes.com/subscribe. And yeah, I know it's been a pretty tough week, so we thank you all for taking the time to be with us, and I hope everyone has a safe holiday weekend. Thank you, everyone.
All right, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Rita.